Elden Ring Nightreign is a very different beast to Elden Ring, or any other Soulsborne game before it, which means it can be very overwhelming to get to grips with at the start, even if you've had previous experience with From Software's games before. In this beginner's guide, Eurogamer's Higton, will be stripping everything back to the basics in order to give both newcomers and returning Tarnished a helping hand at the start of the game, by explaining some of the things that From Software doesn't. One of the things that really annoyed newcomers to Elden Ring was its easily missable tutorial area. The amount of people who wandered right past it at the beginning of the game and then entered Limgrave completely unprepared was staggering, but that's typical troll-like From Software game design for you. Thankfully, it's not possible to miss Nightreign's tutorial, as it throws you straight in there from the start, and guides you through the basic controls with Wilder, the default all-rounder character. One thing that might surprise newcomers, but that returning players will probably know to expect though, is that you are supposed to die to the Fell Omen boss at the end of the tutorial. So don't worry if you get an arse whooping here, as you'll then respawn at Roundtable Hold, where you can begin the game proper by embarking on expeditions. One thing worth noting if you're a super confident and massively impatient returning Tarnished is that it is possible to skip the tutorial from the system menu. If you feel like you need to go back and brush up on some basics however, or to have another bash at trying to defeat the Fell Omen, you can replay the tutorial at any point by heading to the Visual Codex book in Roundtable Hold, where you'll find the option to do so on the first page of the guide chapter. And, on the subject of Roundtable Hold, returning Tarnished will instantly recognise this place as the small hub world which they could fast travel to in Elden Ring in order to barter with merchants and upgrade things like their weapons and spirit ashes. While Roundtable Hold is still the base of operations in Nightreign, it is a little bit different, and one of the first things experienced Tarnished will notice is that it has now been opened up, allowing players to access new parts of the building and its exterior.
Care for a drink?
At first, Roundtable Hold may feel a bit empty, but the more Nightlord bosses you defeat, the more it will expand and open up. For example, this side room just south of the sparring area will be full of old crates at the start of the game, but after you complete at least 2 expeditions, it will transform into a changing room, where you can swap between any of the outfits that you've unlocked for your chosen Nightfarer. Expedition progress will also unlock new areas like the Crypt, initiate story events in certain areas like the Shore, and after satisfying certain requirements, you will even be able to unlock 2 new Nightfarers here as well.
We'll slay this Night Lord yet.
At the start of the game, however, you'll mainly want to concentrate on the following areas. The Table of Lost Grace in the central chamber is where you'll be able to start your expeditions into Limveld, sort out your matchmaking options, or, if you're brave enough, begin a solo run. This suit of banished knight armour found in the same room as the Table of Lost Grace is where you'll be able to select your player character. Just interact with it and you can freely switch between them. This selection only really matters for things you want to do in Roundtable Hold though, as you will get another chance to change your character once you and your party head into an expedition. Other good places for beginners to check out are the sparring grounds, where you can practice basic combat with your chosen Nightfarer, the aforementioned Visual Codex, which contains information on the game's systems, controls and lore, and then the Journal, which keeps a record of your progression with each character. One thing worth noting before I move on is that Roundtable Hold is always a solo experience, so don't think that you can invite your pals over to hang out and do some sparring with before going on an expedition, because, well, you can't. Talking about pals, Elden Ring Nightreign's main focus is on multiplayer gameplay. While returning Tarnished may be tempted to go it alone in solo mode, which is totally possible from the outset, it is worth pointing out that going into Limveld without backup is brutally hard, and from my experience, it's not really worth doing unless you're either a godlike Soulsborne player or just an absolute masochist. Enemy health is scaled down when in solo mode, so that will give you a slight edge, but the pure number of them, the randomization of their placements, and the against-the-clock nature of the gameplay means that you can easily get overwhelmed without backup. Thankfully, there is one thing that you can buy from shops during expeditions, which will be a massive help to solo players, and that's called the Item of Wending Grace. This item will allow you to revive once if you die during a nighttime boss fight, so keep an eye out for merchants on the map, signified by these little hooded figure icons. The Item of Wending Grace will set you back 10,000 runes, so it's a choice between this or levelling up, but it's a good safety net to have if you can afford it. Alright, so just like in its other Soulsborne style games, From Software is very vague about pretty much everything, and it just kind of throws you in at the deep end, and this is especially true for Nightreign. That's because the second the game starts, you're picked up by a spectral hawk, think Fortnite's battle bus with wings, and then you're flown across Limveld before being dropped off at a random location and left to fend for yourself. There's no more tutorial text, the map, while covered in icons, has no legend, so you don't really know what anything means, and pretty much everything that you see wants to kill you. Just like in a standard Battle Royale game, you have a set amount of time to farm for loot before a circle of hurt known as the Night's Tide begins contracting until it pushes you towards a final boss fight. When the circle is small enough, the location for that fight will then be marked on both your compass with an Erdtree icon, your map with an Erdtree icon, and a spectral golden tree will also appear in the sky directly above that night's battleground. The main difference between Nightreign and other Battle Royales, though, is that each expedition lasts 3 days, with the boss battles taking place at night. Also, you're not just after loot like weapons and consumables here. You also need to kill as many enemies as possible during the day in order to earn runes which you can then spend on levelling up at Sites of Grace, or for items from merchants. So the gameplay flow then is Day 1, farm for loot and runes and level up. Night 1, boss battle. Day 2, farm for loots and runes and level up. Night 2, boss battle. Day 3, however, is different. If you make it that far, you will be taken to a sanctuary called the Spirit Shelter, where you can level up, buy things from a merchant, and upgrade your equipment before you face the final Night Lord boss battle. Now, as you might expect from a Soulsborne game, this whole process is very hard indeed, which is where your pals come in. In multiplayer, if you get punched so hard that all of your health falls off, your companions will have a certain amount of time to revive you, and to do that, they must attack your poor mangled body, because, well, From Software. If they don't get to you in time, however, you will die, and you will then respawn a short while later. In solo mode, however, if you get knocked, you'll die instantly and then respawn after a few seconds. The most important thing to know about death in Nightreign, though, is that if you or anyone on your team dies during that day, you or they will respawn -1 level and any runes that you or they had on you or them at the time of death. If you or your team all die at the same time during a night battle, that will cause a complete game over, and you will have to start again from the beginning. During the day, any runes dropped can be reclaimed from the ground where you fell, or from the enemy that killed you, if you can grab them before dying again, that is, but occasionally this could mean having to go inside the Night's Tide to grab them, which is almost certainly fatal, so try not to do that. It's very easy to forget about the night's tide when you're absorbed in exploration and rune gathering, so make sure to keep an eye on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Warning messages regarding the night's tide will appear here, just below your rune counter. Once you get the alert that the night's tide is closing in, make sure to check your map and plan your route into the safe area accordingly, as getting stuck inside the tide's blue flames for even a short amount of time can be fatal. This is especially true if you decide to explore a tunnel or a cavern, as they are very easy to get trapped in once the night's tide starts. If you do decide to do some dungeon crawling, always keep an eye on those warning messages and remember the route you travelled in order to give yourself plenty of time to make your way back outside without getting lost. Also well worth remembering is the fact that if you open up the map and press down on the D-pad while you're in a dungeon, you will be shown a map of the current dungeon's layout, so you'll easily be able to identify other escape routes in a pinch. While it is, as previously mentioned, possible to buy items from merchants using runes, smart players will concentrate on leveling up as much as possible during the first day of the expedition. Visiting a site of grace like this one here will allow you to spend your runes on leveling up, which will increase your chosen character's stats. Each level is more expensive than the last, so farming enemies for runes and then heading to a site of grace to spend them on a much needed boost is imperative to your survival. Just be careful not to get greedy. Seasoned Elden Ring players know how painful it is to lose a large amount of runes, but it's even worse in Nightreign as the clock is always against you. Due to the tight time limit caused by the constant push of the night's tide, the player characters in Nightreign have an expanded movement set, which makes navigating the often unpredictable scenery of Limveld much easier than you'd think. For a start, unlike Elden Ring, there's no fall damage here, so no matter the height, as long as you're not falling into the bottomless sea, you'll survive any drop that you throw yourself off of. In place of Elden Ring's Steed Torrent, players also get a new Surge Sprint, which they can use to quickly traverse the map by clicking in the left thumbstick. This can also be used in combat to avoid attacks, but it will drain stamina much faster than a simple dash. Alongside the Surge Sprint, players also have new wall jumping and mantling abilities, which make it super easy to scramble up a cliff face. Just keep an eye out for these white surfaces and keep hammering the jump button, X on PlayStation and A on Xbox, to bounce on upwards like you're wearing helium boots. There are also two other methods of traversal that will come in handy if you're in a rush. Spirit streams are rising vortexes of blue energy that will shoot you through the air, and you'll find their locations marked on the map with icons that look like rocks covered in blue fire. The other map icon you'll want to keep an eye out for if you're trying to escape the night's tide are these ghostly blue trees. Head to one of these and you can summon a spectral hawk to fly you out of danger. But be warned, you can't change the direction of their flight path, which is shown by this arching line. So pay attention to that before you decide whether or not to hop on. You really don't want to fly straight into the night's tide if you can help it, but it is possible to let go of the hawks mid-flight if you need a bit of a speed boost but don't want to go the full distance. If you're keen to stay alive for as long as possible, check your map as soon as you land in Limveld and look for these golden church icons. These signify the location of ruined churches where you can find all important upgrades to your limited use healing item, the Flask of Crimson Tears. You start each expedition with only 3 of these, and they will only refill if you visit a site of grace, so make sure to plan your route around as many ruined churches as possible, as this will give you a load more staying power once you're locked into a night boss battle. There are multiple ways to restore your health, FP and stamina, including using consumables or by visiting a site of grace, but something the game doesn't tell you is that you can also do this in a pinch by harvesting certain plants around the map. Run through these roa fruit bushes for instance, and a quick button press will refill your health instantly, which is great if you're fleeing from a battle. You can also do this for your FP, aka your focus points for magic etc, at these translucent trees, and if you activate one of these gravestones as you go past it, you can even summon foe-chasing vengeful spirits that will act as one-use homing missiles against the first enemy you come across. Handy. Also, keep an eye out for these golden trees, especially before going into a boss fight, as interacting with these will boost the amount of runes that you can earn for a limited amount of time. There are many other locations marked on your map, which, while not as chilled as the ruined churches, can often be just as rewarding to visit as long as you're up for the challenge. Castles, ruins, tunnels, basically any point of interest that you can see will be home to many enemies and the occasional optional boss too. Optional bosses are great for two things: farming large amounts of runes and getting random rewards in the form of weapons and buffs. It's also worth noting that a Site of Grace will sometimes spawn once you defeat an optional boss, so that you can quickly spend the runes that you just earned on leveling up. Optional bosses also come in two flavours, called enemies and great enemies. The easier ones are just called enemies, and you should try to take these out whenever you see one, as they are much quicker to beat. Greater enemies offer better rewards, but when time is against you, it can be wise not to get drawn into a lengthy battle. Some of the easiest enemy bosses to defeat include the Oracle Envoys, which occasionally spawn at great church sites, and the Guardian Golems, which can normally be found near or on top of castles. The more you play the game, the more you'll get to know which of these optional bosses you find easiest to defeat, and once you do, you'll be able to plan your route around Limveld to maximise your rune gathering. Optional bosses aren't the only way to earn loot though. You can also find treasure chests dotted around Limgrave, which hold different combinations of both equipment like weapons and shields and consumable items like throwables or healing items. You'll often find supply crates at points of interest too. Just keep an eye out for the orange cloth draped over them and the ghostly light emanating from the tops. Supply crates only contain consumables, so they're not worth risking your life over like a treasure chest may be, but if you're running low on some items, it might be worth rolling through a couple of crates to see what falls out. Keep an eye out for the colours of the loot drops too, as they will affect the stats or effects of each item. White signifies common loot, blue uncommon, purple rare, and gold is legendary, and therefore the most sought after. It is important to remember that at the start of an expedition, you can only carry 4 different consumable items, so you may have to drop something you're holding onto if there's an item that you really want to pick up. But it is also possible to consume items from the floor without having to remove anything else from your inventory, and you can do this by pressing triangle and up on the D-pad on PlayStation and Y and up on the D-pad on Xbox. Now, I'm not going to cover every character in the game in this guide, because each one has their own strengths, weaknesses, skills, passive effects, and ultimate arts, which you will only come to know and get comfortable with through repeated play. Wilder, the default character, is a good all-rounder though, and he's the one that you go through the tutorial with, so it's worth sticking with him for a few runs just to get to grips with everything before you branch out and try other classes. Wilder's passive ability is called Sixth Sense, which lets you cheat death a single time, and this is great for those who are learning or relearning the ropes when it comes to timing in combat. Wilder's character skill, the Claw Shot, lets you pull enemies towards you, which is especially useful against flying foes. His ultimate art is something called an onslaught stake that launches an explosive iron stake into your opponent. But be warned, this one is like a super short-range shotgun, so you have to be really close in order to pull it off. As I mentioned, each character has different skills and abilities, so if you're playing with pals, party composition is really important. For example, you might have one person playing as a tank character like Guardian, one as a healer like Revenant, and another playing as a long-range attacker like Iron Eye. That said, there's nothing to stop all three of you picking the same character if you want. Just make sure that you communicate with your team as much as possible and always try to stick together so that you can quickly revive each other if you fall in battle. Every enemy in Limveld has a weakness to damage types and status ailments, so you should always keep an eye on your weapons and armaments in order to build a varied arsenal of effects. A good thing to keep in mind is not doubling up on things like status ailments. So, for example, it's better to have one sword that does fire damage and one that does holy damage over the two swords that both deal holy damage that I have here. That way you've got more options to choose from if you come across an enemy that's weak to a certain element or status effect. In terms of weapon rarity, common and uncommon weapons are the weakest, whilst rare and legendary weapons deal more damage. Just make sure you are the right level to use these weapons when you pick them up, or you will actually deal reduced damage instead. Uncommon weapons need a minimum character level of 3 to wield properly, while rare weapons need level 7, and you'll need to be a level 10 character to swing a legendary weapon effectively. Most weapons also possess at least one passive effect, and these are active even if the weapon is not in your hand, so make sure to hoard weapons with good passive effects even if you don't plan on using them. The final important thing Nightreign beginners need to know is about something you'll only get your hands on after your first expedition. Whether successful or not, at the climax of each expedition, your Nightfarer will be awarded a random selection of relics, although you will earn a unique relic the first time you defeat each Night Lord boss. Relics provide permanent buffs to your Nightfarer, and the bigger these coloured gem-like thingies are, the higher the number of buffs that they'll give, with 3 being the maximum. In order to equip them, look for the altar with the blue flamed candles next to the Table of Lost Grace, and then choose which Nightfarer you want to buff. Here you can give relics to any Nightfarer you want, or swap out old relics for new ones after a particularly rewarding expedition. Each Nightfarer can hold up to 3 relics in something called Relic Rites, but you will have to match relics to the corresponding colour of the Relic Rite for them to work. For example, Wilder can only use red and blue relics, while Guardian can only use red and yellow, and so on. If you want to get more relics without doing a fighting, you can also visit the Jar Merchant at Roundtable Hold. Here you can use Merc to buy gestures, specific relics, or take a gamble on some scenic flatstones, which give you random relic drops when you buy them. Ooh, a polished one. Nice. Also remember that you can sell any relics you don't want in order to earn more Merc for the Jar Merchant. That way, you can buy even more relics. Just scroll all the way along to the right in the Relic Rites menu and you'll find the sell option after the last Nightfarer on the list. And that is it! Thank you so much for watching this beginner's guide for Elden Ring Nightreign. If you found it useful, please do give it a like, subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, and why not check out our official Eurogamer review of Nightreign, which is on screen and clickable right now. Goodbye.